10 dangerous things in the Victorian and Edwardian homes. The Victorians and the Edwardians lived through a period of extensive growth throughout the industrialisation. More was learnt about transport with the railways, and more was learnt about medicine and how marrying your cousin was no longer a wise thing to do. It was an exciting age to live in, with many a groundbreaking discovery, but with new ideas came new problems, and that is definitely something many Victorians suffered as a result. Nowadays, if a new product comes to our shelves, it has been extensively and scientifically tested to ensure its safety. But it was all trial and error during this era, which led to some strange deaths. The population was booming. The urban population of Britain had grown from 2 million in 1800 to 20 million by the 20th century. London had become the largest populated city in the world, and the need to house, feed and water the masses led to many of the ingenious ideas. Mass production became a popular method of manufacturing, and it resulted in the cost of goods being a lot cheaper. The middle-class families benefited as a result, and they spent their money on many ingenious items at the time, and they wanted to keep their homes fashionable. What they did not know at the time was these products were serious health hazards that had the ability to kill them, and many people did die as a result of the technological inventions brought into people's homes. Please continue to support my channel by subscribing. They mixed bread with alum as a way to tackle the ever-growing population and to feed all of the Victorian people. The Victorian manufacturers began making bread that was whiter and heavier, hoping it would improve the quality of the bread. They were looking to improve their bottom line also, and so they switched some of the ingredients out that would add bulk and weight to the bread. The bread was mixed with bean flour, chalk or alum. Alum is used today as a detergent, so you can only imagine that it is not good for you, nor is it healthy. It is an aluminium-based compound, and it led to many people becoming seriously unwell with constipation or chronic diarrhea, of which many children were fatally ill with. Alum was not a nutritious ingredient, and so many people also struggled with malnutrition and other bowel issues. Dangerous bathrooms. The bathroom that we are privileged to use today and invented during the Victorian era. So once you'd eaten that dodgy bread, you would then need to use the bathroom, which was also not very safe either. However, they had not quite mastered all of the logistics of making it a smooth operation. The water was sometimes too hot, which led to many people being scalded in the bath, and the toilet was also known to randomly explode, and this was due to the flammable gases that were emitted from human waste, such as methane and hydrogen sulfide. Over a number of years, the build-up of human excrement in the sewers meant that the backlog would just come back up into the toilets inside people's homes. A naked flame or candle would and did set alight, and candles were still being used for light at the time, and the two were not very compatible together. Boracic acid in milk. Other food and beverages were being altered as well as the bread, but this time it was being done by the people rather than the manufacturers. The people believed that boracic acid would purify the milk and stop it from going sour or going off so that it would last longer, and so they began to mix it with the milk. It was assumed that using this acid was harmless, but it wasn't, and it led to many people becoming sick with nausea, vomiting, abdominal pain and diarrhea. The milk at the time was a breeding ground for dangerous bacteria such as bovine TB, and the acid helped cover this up, meaning people were getting very sick. Before milk was pasteurized, bovine TB would damage the internal organs and the bones of the spine and could lead to spinal deformities. It is estimated that up to 500,000 children died from bovine TB from milk during the Victorian period. Flammable Parkesine. One of the many British inventors, Alexander Parkes, invented a new mouldable material that could be moulded into many and any different items. It was later known as plastic. He named it Parkesine, and during the early stages of his invention, the item that had clearly not been fully tested, as it was highly flammable as it started to degrade, and it would even self-ignite and would become explosive on impact. Not very ideal when it was being made into hairpins, brooches and billiard balls. Killer staircases. The houses at the time were built very rapidly to deal with the ever-growing population and the number of families that needed to be housed. The servants of middle-class folk would sleep in the higher floors of homes, and an area that was often overlooked in the design was the staircases. They were built with little thought for the people that would use them. They were too steep and too narrow to climb safely. The steps were also made irregular, and so the person would have to concentrate every time they climbed the stairs, making it a deadly construction. When the servants would be carrying out their duties such as taking dirty dishes away to clean, or when they wore long skirts, the combination of uneven stairs, long skirts and carrying items became deadly, and it was commonly fatal. Carbolic acid poisoning. During this period of improved education, the importance on ridding the home of germs became the new thing. The Victorians were now aware that microbes were something that lurked in their homes that they could not see but could cause them harm, and so they wanted to ensure their home was as clean as possible. Just like we have Mrs. Hinch now in the UK for cleaning tips and advice, the Victorians had advertisements that encouraged the average person to disinfect their homes to a godly level. The ingredients in these cleaning products, however, were far from godly. They were extremely unsafe when exposed to them in large quantities. Carbolic acid was used to rid the home of infection and disease, and it was wrapped in bottles that were no different to any other household products, making it hard to distinguish between the boxes of caustic soda and baking powder. In September 1888, the Aberdeen Evening Express reported that 13 people had been poisoned by carbolic acid in just one incident alone, and of those that were ill, 5 of them died. It was only 4 years later, in 1902, that the Pharmacy Act made it illegal for bottles of dangerous chemicals to be similar in shape to ordinary liquids. Radium. One of the most interesting elements that was discovered during the Edwardian era. It was an element that provided light and energy, and it was extremely fascinating to look at. The element was called radium. It was used in all manner of products to produce a glow, in cigarettes, condoms, makeup, suppositories, toothpaste, and even chocolate. It was the new glow-in-the-dark craze, and even fashion watches were painted with it. It was not known at the time, but radium is extremely poisonous, and it is a source of radiation. Exposure and ingesting radium could lead to all manner of illnesses and fatal conditions, such as anemia, bone fractures, necrosis of the jaw, and leukemia. The wonder material. The wonder material that is still being disposed of nowadays from old buildings and the odd shed. But now the men turn up in big hazmat suits and everybody must leave the site at the first sign of it. The material is called asbestos and it was engineered during the Edwardian period. The mineral was used because it was non-flammable like some of the other materials mentioned previously. It was cheap and it was clean. In the early 20th century, the home would have many sources of asbestos, from the floor tiles to the insulation and even in clothing. But this mineral was extremely dangerous if inhaled and caused devastating consequences to the lungs. It is unknown how many people were killed by asbestos, but due to its popularity, it is likely to have been thousands. Fridges. Domestic refrigerators were another Edwardian innovation. It allowed people to keep food fresh for longer, and they could finally stop picking the mould off of bread after only a short few days. It was a highly useful part of the home, and it showed extreme fashionable wealth by those that could afford to buy one. Unfortunately, the fridges had not been tested again, and the health and safety of them was flawed. They were not yet suitable to live in the home, as they leaked toxic gases such as ammonia, methyl chloride and sulfur dioxide into the air that damaged the lungs and led to death. Electricity. The arrival of electricity was perhaps the most exciting and extraordinary innovation of the time. It was a completely alien invention to everyone, and despite small, non-urgent warning signs that advised people not to light matches in front of a socket, there were very little instructions or knowledge on it. The energy companies wanted to entice its customers with more goods than just electric lights, and so a few electric innovations were created, such as the electric tablecloth. This was a cloth that allowed lamps to be plugged into it, but as it was used in the kitchen, on the table, it was exposed to water when someone was drinking wine or water at the table, and there was a spillage. As we know now, water and electricity do not go very well together, and many people were electrocuted. The invention was still fairly new, and customers were trying to run many appliances from one socket, unaware of the dangers of doing so. When things stopped working, people tried to fix the problems themselves, which resulted in uninsulated wires with the metal bit exposed. This led to hundreds and thousands of cases of fatal electrocutions. Please continue to support my channel by subscribing. Please comment, like and subscribe if you wish for more stories, and leave your suggestions below and I will endeavour to cover them.